My name is Brett Smith, owner of Whitetail Land Management Services. This is the public land pick apart. Sorry to interrupt this video for this awesome giveaway. All right, guys. So we're giving away some Vortex binos. You look like you could use some free binos. Do you like free binos? Do you like free hunting gear? Well, you're in the right place. We're gonna give away a lot of it. We're gonna start with a pair of Vortex binos. So in order to win these Vortex binos, it's not that hard, guys. All you gotta do is like this video, subscribe to the channel, and you can even comment below for extra entries. So we're gonna be giving away a pair of Vortex binos for now. But don't worry, if you don't win the Vortex binos, we're gonna keep giving stuff away. We're looking to ramp this channel up fast. So the faster we get more subscribers, the faster we start giving away stuff. Do you want a new bow? We're gonna be giving away a new bow. There's a whole list of things that we're gonna be giving away. This is just the first. So if you get entered now, you're gonna be entered for all future giveaways. So like I said, guys, we're gonna give away a pair of Vortex binos very soon. We only got a handful of subscribers to go until we get to our goal. When we get there, we're gonna announce it. We'll probably do another video announcing who the winner is and give away some free stuff. So if you guys want a pair of Vortex binos, maybe a bow in the future, or a lot of other cool gear, hit the subscribe button, make sure you're liking these videos, and also comment for extra entries. So simple as that. If you like free stuff, do it. All right, guys, coming at you with another segment of the public land pick apart. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the public land pick apart, this is a segment where I give you all the answers. You know, remember that bad chemistry test you had back in high school and you wish somebody would have just handed you the answers? Well, that's what we got going here for public land hunting. I'm picking states and I'm picking pieces of public land in those states, just randomly, places I've never been. I'm taking their maps, looking at all the features, topographical, the vegetation change, the natural corridors. I'm picking them apart. And I'm gonna give tips as to where I'd set up and maybe the time of year that might be a good idea to set up in these spots. Just going into all the different variables as to why these might be good spots. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. Yes, I do this for a living. Yes, I design properties for a living, full-time job, but I'm not 100% accurate at looking at a property, or I wouldn't say that you can expect 100% accuracy from looking at a property, never being there, never stepping foot on the ground, and just picking topo features and killing deer off of it. Now, I'm not going to say I haven't done it. I've done it a handful of times, showing up to a new spot and getting it done the first sit, literally with never being in the area. With that being said, I'd always recommend that you go in there and you actually you go and you kind of look at these spots. So the first place that I'm going to pick apart, well, the one place I guess I chose to pick apart in Wisconsin is the lower Wisconsin State Riverway. It's a piece, I don't know, let's see here. Like I said, I'm giving you guys all the answers right now. I'm gonna show you everything. It's a piece near the little town of Woodman. You can see Woodman up here in the corner. Why did I pick this piece? Well, it's kind of far away from cities. I don't know exactly how far. Anything major, I'd say hopefully an hour. Sounds about right. Once you get on that hour time frame of distance away from a major city, you're going to see less pressure. I would assume. That's what I've kind of noticed. And then I decided, you know, if I zoom out a little bit, it was kind of the bigger chunk of this riverway system. The reason I picked a bigger chunk is it's a lot more area for me to get away from the pressure of people. Less pressure of people, the more predictable deer movement's going to be. And if I don't have to worry about hunting people as well as the deer, it's only going to make it a little bit easier. So if deer are on more natural movement, you know, natural corridors, traveling natural corridors, things like that, it's going to make the hunting a lot easier for me. So I picked a bigger piece where I can get away from people. Another thing I picked out about this part is we have access from the south. What does that mean? Well, if you're a big believer in only hunting when the conditions are right, which isn't my personal preference, I hunt whenever I can because I like to take time to, learn no matter what. I'm not just going to only go out there when it's perfect. I like to take every opportunity I can to, you know, go out there and learn things. So. But if you are interested in waiting for the cold front, like a lot of people like to do, this property lays out well for it. Why do I say that? Access from the south. Access from the south means this lays out well for predominantly north winds, which happen when? On a cold front. So If you're the guy that believes in waiting on the cold front, which a lot of people do, this lays out well for that. So the access points look minimal. There might be 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 4. But as you get closer at this map and you really start looking at it, holy topography. This place has a lot of topography. What does that say to me? It says unless you're willing to put in some work, you're not gonna get far. Some of these cliffs, if I really zoom in, I want to say are well over 100 feet, which is going to steer people into certain directions. It's also going to steer the deer into certain areas as well. So this is a win-win if you're willing to put in some work. And if you're a public land guy who likes to go walk a mile and feels like they got to get a mile back, this might be a spot for you. Another thing I'm noticing from this from the topographical maps, the topography, is it's very neat. It's very neat hill country. And what I mean is there's not a lot of, maybe I want to call it intersecting of topo lines. Like the lines all stay pretty much the same all the way throughout these ridge systems. They never really get real big gaps in between the lines or anything like that. So they're pretty consistent, which means to me that first I'll back up for a second. A lot of times deer in hill country like to travel a specific topo line, and you'll find out what that topo line is when you go in there and scout and you find the trail. I mean, they're probably going to stay on that topo line. Sometimes you can pick that topo line out and a cruising buck might be on that same topo line because it was the path of least resistance, which is ultimately why they stay on that topo line, a half mile later. Your buddy might see him a half mile away on the ridge and say, hey, you guys are sitting equally as high up the ridge, but a half mile apart. Hey, I just had a buck pass through. And for all you know, that buck might keep cruising through because he never found what he was looking for. But he'll probably be on the same topo line because it's the path of least resistance. They're like humans. They don't want to have to go up and down these crazy ridges, and they're not going to unless they have to. Now, in the rut, deer will do crazy things. If they're pressured, deer will do crazy things. But this is also why I picked this piece apart. So like I said, I'm not expecting everybody to go and hunt the lower Wisconsin State Riverway, but if you do, well, 1, I'm gonna give you the cheat sheet right now, and 2, you can at least learn as to why I'm choosing these areas. So I'd be willing to bet right down here, a lot of guys access. It is the only flat ground, and it moves back pretty far. And I would say possibly even a mile. So let's measure this out here. You walk around this edge. Come on. What do we got here for a total distance? If you go all the way back here, which is one of the first spots that I'm looking to go, you are looking at a overall distance from where the trail looks like it at least stops down here. You're looking at 0.8 miles one way. Well, good news for all you public land freaks out there that like to get way deep in the public. We're going deeper. You can see that there is and this is obviously a spot where I'm really focusing on topographical features because that's what we're dealing with here. There's not quite as much diverse habitat edge. I'm sure there is in small pockets, but not a ton that I can see from aerial maps. The main area that I would look to check out is this long ridge top. Okay, and here is your ridge point, or your peak, I should say. A lot of times deer like to have a vantage in hill country. So by going in here and cruising down this ridge and probably setting up, me personally, somewhere in here, you can see those topo lines start to expand and get a little wider at the top of this ridge. Everything's going to funnel into that point. As you can see, all these lines from different directions funnel in right there. There's a good chance that a lot of your movement could also funnel into that section because it's one of the few flat spots and it's on the very top of the ridge. So I'm not opposed to that at all. And like I said, I like ridge tops. If I did, give a list of 5 of my favorite topo features, just getting on the ridge top is always one of my favorite because, like I said, it's the path of least resistance. Being up top like that, it's a path of least resistance. Simple as that. These deer don't want to have to go up and down these 200-foot cliffs if they don't have to. So when I look at these areas, I'm picking apart a couple other things. Let's back it up here. So actually at the beginning, from our long trek up, our 3/4 of a mile trek in, you can see there are some water tributaries that are running out towards the fields. If these were significant, which I don't think they are because they're dotted lines, but even so, they still might be travel corridors. Sitting at the top of these might be a good option for sitting during the rut. In this spot, you know, straight west, you could even probably hunt down here on the northwest, some westerly wind up here. Basically these creek systems, or the way the topography lies, or both of them in this case, because if you watch and look at the topography, and it does make sense if you really think about it, the topography and the river systems or the creek systems are all flowing the same way. When that creek finally does run out at its peak, it creates the top of a draw, okay? And at the top of a draw, that's an intersecting point. So these deer don't wanna, once again, have to go down and up these really steep creek ravines, these creek bottoms. They're gonna take the topography all the way around the tops of them. And the wind lays out perfectly in the spot for westerly winds. You could play with that northwest, that southwest, and the west, and anything in between. So I do really like those. As far as rut hunting this property, that's when I recommend hunting something like this, just because of these topo features. So let's see if I can find another random one in here. The ones that I would really focus on this property are the tops of those draws. Then they're everywhere. So in that last case, we had a tributary that ran through the bottom. There doesn't have to be a tributary, but if you look down here, obviously it's a little bit closer to the road. Not ideal, but the tops of these draws, again, these deer are gonna make these S curves up and down, following the same topo line. Pick a topo line, guys, and watch what it does all the way around, up and down. And at the top of them, you can almost guarantee that there's gonna be some sort of trail system, just because that path of least resistance led them to that point. So I'm not opposed to sitting on the tops of any of those, especially a little bit farther back, you know, off the road and things like that. One of the other spots that I did end up kind of looking at a little bit more, and you'd have to be a crazy human being to get down in here, but I'd be willing to bet if it's not too wet, if it's not too flooded, you probably have some luck down there. And if you dropped, so basically if you dropped off the bottom of this ridge, or off the top, went all the way to the bottom, and it does look like it could be wet in here, but let's say it's not. Let's say you have a year where the river's down a little bit. I guarantee you find some buck sign down there, and next to nobody will ever go down in there. Your access is nearly impossible, or you gotta be pretty crazy to do it. But like I said, we're already looking at 0.81 miles right here. So now factor in, let's say you went back there and then you dropped off this ridge, you'd probably have another 3/4 of a mile. You might be going 1.5 miles one way. But for that all day sit, maybe you get down here in the bottom of one of these draws. And the nice thing about the bottom of these little draws right here is those might be spots where if there is deer in the bottom, they come up the ridge because it's the path of least resistance. And that's what I'm looking for in hill country when I'm looking for how these deer are traveling. The more I'm actually looking at it, there might be a nice little thicket in here. Yeah, sure enough, a nice little thicket in here. So actually, if I were to hunt that, I would probably hunt like these draws right here, because these draws do lead up into that general vicinity. So whether you're sitting at the top of these draws or you're crazy enough to go all the way down in the bottom, I'm sure there's deer running around in the bottom. And since I like hunting edge, because whitetails are creatures of the edge, I'd be sitting right on the bottom of it where it kind of meets the bottom of the ridge and where it meets all that flat ground down in there. Once again, might be a little bit wet, so that might not be the greatest spot in the world, but on a dry year, I bet you find buck sign down there. So like I said, with a little bit closer eye on this spot, I do like this. I do like this a lot. And honestly, if you're willing to do some walking, this wouldn't be the hardest spot to get to. Let's see what the overall length on that walk would be quick here. I'm thinking we said that was 0.81 about, so let's just call this a straight shot. Here. And then you cut in. So just to get to that general area, another 0.7 of a mile, so another 3/4 mile. So about that 1.5 mile marker, and it's hard to say if this trail system actually does or doesn't exist. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If it does, obviously that's quite the shortcut. If it doesn't, I don't know how many guys are gonna wanna track through this topo. They're probably gonna take the long way around and just, walk the flat ground. So These are some spots that caught my eye, and this is more so a property where I guess I could just dissect why I chose areas more so than find the perfect area. Although I do think if you went to a place like this during the rut, you could sit on the top of one of these draws, guys, and if you really just put in your time on the top of a draw, that creates that pinch at the top because it's so steep and narrow lower in the ridge that these deer don't want to go down and up. I think you'd kill a decent buck. And the nice thing about this is all that topography that we talked about is going to keep people away. They might go up one ridge, but they ain't going to go over two. They're probably not going to go over three. So if you're willing to do some walking, if you're willing to put in an all-day sit, this probably wouldn't be a bad spot. And in fact, I almost kind of regret telling people about this one because, you know, it'd be a drive for me, but it does look good. So like I said, we got that perfect access from the south, northwest winds. If you're all about hunting cold fronts, that northwest wind normally brings in a cold front. And overall, this just looks like a nice piece with topography that's going to steer deer in certain direction. It's a lot going on, but if you understand topographical maps, you'll understand that this, I mean, truly is going to steer deer with how steep it is. This deer are going to want to stay on that same level, that same topographical line most likely. And now if you can correlate some sort of food source or which could be possible here, or more importantly, probably a bedding area with one of these pinch points. Let's go back to this one we talked about real quick here. If you just got, you know, maybe up on this little draw point here, on some westerly wind, you J-hooked around and you got here and they were coming out of there. This is probably the intersecting point. Like I said, pick that topo line and follow it around, guys, making that S curve. So if they were to come out of there, they'd probably intersect someplace in here. So be a long walk, might be worth your time. Any westerly wind, you could get away with it, especially, well, maybe not so much as southwest, it would probably blow in there on your axis in, but your northwest wind, once again, would be a great spot. So overall, guys, this is my public land pick apart of the lower Wisconsin State Riverway. Not saying you got to go hunt this place. Some of you probably aren't happy I showed this place off, but let's face the facts. You got to be willing to put in some work if you're going to hunt this place. Sounds good in theory. I think you will be surprised if you've never been to this piece, which I have not. The topography is probably going to scare you. And I would say about 90% of the guys are going to take that field in. Just a matter of how far you're willing to walk in that field or take a different access route. Take a different route to get to some of these locations. That's how I picked apart this map. So maybe you can look deeper in this map, pick some other locations out, and ultimately find yourself a great hunting spot. So this is my public land pick apart for the state of Wisconsin, and I chose the lower Wisconsin State Riverway. Good luck, guys. Oh, and one last thing. If you like these videos, make sure you're liking and subscribing. We're gonna keep posting these segments. We're gonna do a couple maybe for every state. We'll see as time goes on. We're for sure gonna pick apart a handful of states, so we'll go from there.